Wow, the phone just didn't want to cooperate.
Okay. Can you hear me, Krow?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, good. I've got trying my new headset. Well, new to me headset. Got it from a retired trucker.
It's
Yeah, the something called a Blue Parrot 250. He used it for 10 years, and then for the last couple of years, it sat in a drawer. And so, anyway,
that's like
I asked him about it, and he said, "Yeah, you can use it." And it seems to work. It seems to be a good one.
when I drove across Canada to take a friend's truck back to New Brunswick. They I had this hands-free thing that my mom gave me years ago, and it was already old when she gave it to me. It was like one of the original hands-free, put out by Volkswagen. Like, and it has like Volkswagen right on it. It's like, wow. And that was given to her by the Volkswagen dealer as a promotion with a new car that she had bought back in like
Nice.
'03 or something like that. So yeah. Some of the old
Okay.
stuff works
Would
good.
you like to? Yeah. Yeah, it does. It does. Would you like to do the prayer?
I certainly can. Let's see, where is my sheet? I know it's here somewhere, buried, I'm sure, under tons and tons of stuff. Now, where would that have ever gone to? It shouldn't have went anywheres. Well, it shouldn't be in that pile.
Not only do we have no script, we don't even share notes before we do the show.
I,
It's like, who's doing the thing? Oh, you want to do it?
oh,
Okay, let me see if I can find
here we
something.
go. It's stuck between two papers.
All right.
Yeah, there's a pile of them. Mm,
Hmm.
That's the drawing for my house.
Okay.
This is what I'm especially proud of because this is the island in the kitchen. And I had so very little room to work with because there's a window here. So I couldn't put anything along that wall because I didn't want to have to deal with the outside and removing a window, especially on the south side of the house. And then we had this spot going into the bedrooms. And so I had to figure out a way to fit a closet. So this is actually a closet, and there's a broom closet right here in the corner. And then the fridge, the stove, and a short cupboard go there on this side. And you can see how really close to the counter it is in the kitchen. And that was quite the sit down design because the house, when I first got it, this bedroom did not exist. This was part of the living room, believe it or not. And this bedroom over here was half the size. There was a small bedroom in this area too. So I tore out everything on this side, put in two bedrooms. My office is right here in between the two bedrooms. This is where I'm sitting right now. And we were able to have a big bedroom, which is like 13 by 11 feet. And all the rooms are 7 feet, 7.5 feet by 11 feet. So we took the majority of the stuff here. And there was like so many structural things to screw around with that it was unbelievable. And then there's another one here that I'm a little proud of, if I can find it, because it's just so cool. Oh, yes. This is actually a design. If things went right to shit, I could I designed this for my little minivan that I use for doing service work. And I actually slept in my van on the way back from New Brunswick, because what I did is I had to take the truck for my friend back to New Brunswick. They paid for the trip, but I couldn't rent a car and drive back to Regina because of COVID. So I rented a U-Haul trailer, put my little minivan on the U-Haul trailer, and dragged it all the way to New Brunswick with me, with my friend's truck, like $1,400 in fuel to take the truck across. And then got to New Brunswick, gave the U-Haul trailer, dropped it off, and then I had my own van with Saskatchewan plates driving around New Brunswick. And then I was able to just, as soon as I felt like it, boom, I pointed my van west and drove back home. And I slept in that van all the way out because it was just on the trailer, so that's where I slept. And I slept in it all the way back. And yeah, it was getting a little odory by the time I got back to Regina. I mean, that was like 10 days of living in my van. Well, 8 days, 4 days out, 4 days back. And the in between days, I stayed at my daughter's. And yeah, it was comfortable. It was really comfortable. I was like sleeping out in like places outside the city because I had the van. I could sleep wherever the hell I want. And I'll tell you, it's been years since I seen the stars that bright. And it was like, I mean, I'm sure you see the stars all the time where you're at, but in Regina, yeah, not so much. A lot of light pollution. And yeah, you could just like see the Milky Way as clear as daylight and just shining down. And I got lucky, I guess, because the day that I traveled out, they were warm nights, so I could just have the side door of the van open all night, and uh, and just having the darkness and being able to see all that. Oh, and clear skies and no moon. That's what I was thinking. So that it seemed like as I drove east, the clouds were moving out to sea ahead of me. Because when I hit New Brunswick, they were at the tail end of a hurricane. And my friend's telling me, it's like, can you like bring that sunshine with you from the west? And I kid you not, I was like, yeah, sure, I can do that. And I kid you not, that is exactly what ended up happening. Like, I was like, the rain was ahead of me the whole way for 6 hours going from northern New Brunswick to southern New Brunswick. It was ahead of me all the time. I could see up ahead where it was just downpouring rain from the hurricane. And then I would come into the edge of it, and then it would leave. And then by the time I did get down into St. John, it was late evening, so it had stopped raining, but woke up the next morning and it was like bright sunshine. And things were starting to dry out. Oh, good stuff. So let's do the prayer. For the Father of the people is with the creation by the Father. With the knowledge in the heaven is with the holy name of the Father. For the knowledge of the truth is for the people of the Father. For the kingdom of the Father is in the knowledge of the truth. For the knowledge of the Spirit is for the unity with the Father. For the freedom of the actions is with the knowledge by the truth. For the protection of the earth is for the life of the people. For the knowledge of the Father is with the protection for the people. For the truth of the people is with the path unto the heaven. For the teaching of the people is with the truth of the people. For the knowledge of the day is for the production, working, and learning skills of the people. For the wrongs, sins against the knowledge is with the actions of the people. For the sins, temptations of the flesh of the people is for the wrongs against our neighbor, for the knowledge of the people in the forgiveness of those wrong decisions. For the people of the debts are of the responsibility in the truth. For the people of the awareness are for the forgiving with the truth, for the knowledge of the people's leader is with the teaching with the truth. For the evil of the people is for the lack of knowledge of the truth. For the knowledge of the truth is for the freedom of the people against the evil of the darkness, the lack of knowledge. For the people are with this agreement.
Thanks, Krow. Heavenly Father, I rededicate myself to your service.
Amen. And let's revisit evil and the lack of knowledge of the truth, because that is actually what we're dealing with right now on this planet, is the lack of knowledge, and also misinformation is prevalent, because it seems like whenever an ounce of truth comes out, the mainstream media just jumps on it and tears it apart and spins everything so that it just seems messed up. Like for what's going on in Australia right now, you've got construction workers pissed off and they're basically protesting. The way the news is spinning it in Australia, and you get this, they're spinning it that these are not construction workers or tradesmen. These are Nazis and far right wingers. And I don't know how anybody can swallow this, because there are thousands of people in the street right now in Australia. And if they are all Nazis and right wingers, well, that tells you something about Australians, doesn't it? I mean, are that many Australians Nazis? Nazi sympathizers? Or right wingers? I mean, that doesn't make sense considering that there is a Labor government in power there right now. So how did those Labor politicians get the votes to make a majority government if so many people are Nazis and right wingers? And we're not talking like the whole country. We're only talking about one state or province or whatever the hell, territory is what they call them in Australia, I think. We're only talking one territory and not like the whole continent. And when we're talking about territories in Australia, it's not much different than here in Canada. I mean, take a province like Saskatchewan. Where does 80 to 85, 90% of the people in this province live? They all live south of Saskatoon. Saskatoon is only 2 hours north from Regina. Regina is about 2 hours north of the United States border. So we're not talking like a huge distance. And the thing is that Saskatoon, it's not even halfway up the province. It's like you got to go all the way up to Uranium Lake or Larange.
Larange is about halfway, I think.
Yeah, and Larange is
Prince Albert. Prince Albert isn't even halfway. I don't.
No, Prince Albert's like an hour and a half north.
Yeah.
And Larange, if you were to drive that, that's like a 6-hour drive.
Yeah, we've done it. It took us all day.
Yeah, so that's a lot of freaking territory. And when there is like literally, there is nothing above Prince Albert. Literally nothing. Not even a road. The only way in and out of like the top, more than like 60% of this province is either ice roads in the wintertime or plains in the summer. That's the only way in and out of there. So when you're talking like about Australia, you got to keep in mind that when you talk about a territory, yeah, it's a huge chunk of land, but there's only this tiny little section of it is where all the people live, and it's all next to the water. So what's going on in Melbourne is a big deal. It pretty much is a reflection of what's going on in that part of Australia. And it's a big deal. And why are these construction workers pissed off? Well, none of these guys can afford to take a week off to be sick from getting the jab, which is what most people experience when they get it. You got lucky.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you felt like shit
I
for
was down for a couple of days.
yeah, you felt like shit for a couple of days, and then you pick
Yeah.
back up. But you're probably,
Mm-hmm.
you're a pretty healthy individual too. I mean, you eat right, you're exercising. Well, not really exercising, you're working. You can call it exercise, but really you're constantly moving. So everything inside your body has had a chance to move around and push the old blood away from your organs and allow new blood to come in. That's actually the biggest killer of a lot of people, like especially like joint diseases, not moving them enough. I mean, there's nothing wrong with going and just cracking all those knuckles and letting some new blood go into in between. That's what keeps you from getting arthritis and shit. You just don't do it all the time. Do it like maybe a couple of times a week. Everything in moderation. But that's the difference. And most of the people, so they can't afford that time. And now the government has said, well, there's just not going to be any construction work, which is actually laughable because if there's not construction and maintenance going on a regular basis, I'm afraid that everything that runs our modern world begins to fall apart very quickly. Like,
Yes.
even in my industry, like when this province opened back up again and for the restaurants and everything like that, I was swamped with calls to go and do service and repair work. Like I was swamped. Like I mean, I needed two of me just to keep up. But I did it. A few calls I had to refuse because the amount of time once I calculated the amount of time in my head and the amount of money that I would make as opposed to like going to other jobs, then I just kind of, well, you know what? I can make more money doing these four jobs as opposed to going to do this one job that is going to take 5 or 6 hours. I was like, no, I'll give that to somebody else because I could do a job. It might last 40, I might do a job for 40 minutes, but I charge for the whole hour. And then I can go on to the next job and then the next job. So I can actually end up making 4 hours of 4 hours of money income, and I could do it in 3 hours. So economically, it was more in my own interest to do these smaller jobs, quick, smaller jobs, and get paid. And some of these jobs only took 30 minutes to take care of. So that is what happened with, and those little jobs still kept me busy for like 2 weeks. And all because the restaurants, even though they were only running like just at like half capacity, their equipment was starting to deteriorate even at half capacity. And so so when they were given permission to operate at full capacity, then they knew their equipment wasn't going to handle it because it was already hurting at half. And so, yeah, they had to get everything up to par. And that was only, what, 9, 10 months of downtime for those restaurants.
Right. Something
Yeah.
like that.
So that is how much deterioration happened in 10 months. Imagine how much deterioration is going to happen, in a city altogether. And that's just my little segment of the trade world that I deal with. There's like, there's like huge segments. I mean, my little part that I deal with commercial equipment is a very, very, very small part of the trade that I'm in. Very small part. And me and about maybe half a dozen other people make a good living in this province doing it. And but then that doesn't include what the plumbers are doing in residential houses. I mean, just because COVID happened doesn't mean that the roots stopped growing into your sewer line. You still needed Mr. Router to come out and run his blades through that pipe to cut all those roots. I mean, you got to get that done on a regular basis here in Regina. I mean, my sewer was done shortly before I moved into this house, so I'm probably good for about maybe 3 years before that has to be done again. And so every 2 or 3 years, you got to pay a guy to come in. He opens up your sewer pipe, runs a blade down it, chops up all the roots that are coming into your pipe, comes back out, done. He's like, in and out of your house in an hour. And you got all kinds of stink. So don't ever get it done in the wintertime. So trades is a big deal. It's what keeps society going. And nobody understands. It doesn't seem like anybody understands. Hell, half the people don't even know where their food comes from. Which which is pretty cool because there's actually this little girl in Saskatchewan. She's like 9 years old, I think. It's egg with Maggie, and she's this 9-year old girl, lives on a farm, and she does these little short video clips, 2 minutes, and she educates people. She started doing it because there were people in her class, kids in her class, that didn't know where their food came from, and she thought that was the saddest thing ever. And now she's like getting into like little contests with the kids that put together a meal with only ingredients from Saskatchewan. And that's pretty cool. And know where your food comes from. And here's the funny part. I mean, I didn't know about this little girl doing these videos until she did an interview with a guy named Quick Dick McDick, which is a Saskatchewan farmer that has a YouTube channel, Quick Dick McDick, and he does segments on agriculture and political commentary, and he's absolutely hilarious. And so that's how that ended up getting on my radar. And now he's taken up her little challenge, which I thought was cool. And he does, so once in a while, he'll do a cooking video, only using ingredients from Saskatchewan. Everything has to be from Saskatchewan. And I was like, wow. I mean, he did pulled pork, and he like used like Saskatoon berries and dried peas, everything. He just bragged how he just had to walk out to the bin to get the dry peas. That was pretty funny. But yeah, things that people do not understand what it takes to run a society. People need to understand, and if they began to understand, then perhaps they would begin to close the gap on their cognitive dissidence. And
Yep.
yeah, because people are just too quick to make judgments from a place of ignorance. A good example came up.
Nice.
Sorry. Mm-hmm.
I think the internet is helping with that. With these things you were mentioning, and then stuff like Smarter Every Day, and then I think I think I told you about on Facebook. There's social media and all these things. Our society is coming to consensus without legislation or without court cases and things like that. I don't think we know exactly the full extent of what we're doing yet. We're being we're harmonizing our collective mind with the internet.
That is expected. Actually, take your mic and just move it straighter out from your mouth, like next to your cheek.
Okay, like this.
Yeah,
How's that?
that's better. Because thing is, if you have it too close to your mouth and nose, every time you breathe, you create a
Okay. Okay.
That's one of the things. Actually, my father was a public speaker teacher, and that was one of the first things that I learned about public speaking, where to put the mic. The mic wanted to be at chin level and about 2 inches out from your chin. And
Right.
then that way you breathe over it, so you don't get that sound. Yeah. So
Thank you.
and so that was always like, every time I see somebody not using a microphone properly, I'm just like, they didn't take a public speaking course. But I did that shit when I was like 12 or 13, so yay me. So yeah, trades and finding out where your food is. Let's close the gap on this card. Oh, this is what I was getting to. This is where the ignorance really comes in, especially from ignorant politicians. There were pictures taken down at the U.S.-Mexico border of Border Patrol agents on horses, swinging their reins while they were on the horse. And all the ignorant people were like, they're whipping the Haitians. And it's just like, have you ever ridden a horse before? Even if you wanted to use those reins as whips, they're not very effective tool for whipping. For one thing, you only have 24 inches. So it's just a flap. And that's not what these guys were doing at all. Anybody who has ridden a horse or knows how to ride a horse, and I grew up on horses. We had horses on the farm. I was professionally trained to ride horses. My parents sent us to summer camp to learn how to ride horses. And so I know how to ride a horse. And what those guys were doing, swinging their leash, that is what you do when you are corralling, doing any kind of corralling. And the reason why you're doing it is because you're scaring off. Like, normally this is done when you're corralling cattle, but it's just as effective in crowd control. And the police do it when they do crowd control in the cities, because the last thing you want is you do not want somebody getting close to the legs of your horse. It's a 1,500-pound animal. For one thing, keeping a 1,500-pound animal under control, it's not all physical. It's like, actually the physical stuff that you got to do with a horse is actually a small percentage. It's all up here. That when you're dealing with a horse, it's all about your emotional state, because that horse will react to your emotional state. If you are excited or anything, that horse is going to get excited too. So, and if you have an excited horse, you've got a problem, because if that horse throws you, you're not just falling a few feet to the ground. You're falling the equivalent of 10 feet to the ground, because not only is that horse about 5 feet off the ground, the saddle that you're sitting on is 5 feet off the ground. Not only are you 5 feet off the ground, But when the horse bucks and throws you, you're going to gain some air. So it can be the equivalent of falling 10 feet, 8 or 10 feet. And I'll tell you, I've done that. And both times that I've fallen 8 feet, yeah, you really do see stars when you knock your head. It's not just in the
Yeah.
cartoons. Yeah, and I do have a bit of a technique for not blacking out, but it usually requires a bit of fair amount of concentration, and I've done it. I actually only blacked out once, believe it or not. I blacked out from brain freeze. I had a slushy. I took a big mouthful and I was like, immediately, I was like, uh-oh, that was a mistake. And it was so bad that my mind was like, I'm not dealing with this shit. And next thing you know, my buddy's like, he's got me by the shoulders and he's like, are you okay, man? He was like, I watched you just go straight down like a ton of bricks. And I was like, wow. I was like, all I can tell you is that the brain freeze happened and I started going. Actually, I didn't actually fall. What it was is that I actually had the cognitive wherewithal to actually grab the table and let myself down slowly. But it was the last few feet that once, like just, he said, just before I got to my knees, that's when everything just went thunk. He said, you look like you had it under control. That's why I didn't jump. But he said, and that just before your knees touched the floor, he said, you just went completely limp. Oh, I crushed my glasses into my face and everything. And yeah, and got back up from that like a minute later. And yeah, that was fun. So yeah, I didn't do that twice. But yeah, so you got these guys, and what they're doing is they want to keep the people away from the horse because not only couldn't they lose control of the horse, worse yet, the horse could trample them. And it doesn't take much to break a rib or to break an arm or to break a leg. It really doesn't. And a 1,500-pound animal can easily do that. So all of this bullshit about them whipping these Haitians at the border, I'll guarantee you that when you're operating a horse, the last thing on your mind is actually thinking about trying to whip anybody. And like I said, on top of that, it would become very awkward very quickly because you don't have that much rein left over when you're trying to keep your horse under control. You have enough to dissuade anything from coming over because not only that rain going around, that rain makes a noise and people hear that noise or the animal hears that noise and it's aware of a object and it will move away from it. Well, that's what these Haitians were doing. And then, of course, they're down on a riverbank where the soil is uneven and the horses are just everything they can do to keep from falling over. And it's the operator's anything the operator can do to keep that horse under control in that situation. So all I can say is if you think that they were whipping those people, go out and ride a horse if you've never ridden one before. And you will realize very, very quickly that it's not like operating a vehicle. It's like, yeah, you have to be aware all the time. I can drive I can drive to Yorkton. And I'll tell you, half the time I don't even remember the road because the vehicle practically drives itself. But on my horse, I had to pay attention all the time. Eyes and ears, situational awareness. Why? Because I had to be aware of a branch snapping in the woods that was going to startle my horse and throw me. So I had to be constantly ready to snap those reins right quick to put the horse back in line. So you don't fall asleep at the wheel with a horse. I mean, I've done it, but only because at one point, I had a really good horse for number one. It was an amazing horse. And number two, we were on our way back home. And that horse knew the path better than me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I could trust that horse to just take her time going home. Now, I end up fighting with her going to my destination, but once we had pointed home, she was like, "Yep, I'm all for that." And I ended up passing out on the horse because I went to a party and I knew I was going to this party and I knew I was going to get drunk. And so I did get drunk. I went outside, got on my horse while everybody else had bikes. This guy had a horse. And yeah, the girls like horses more than they like the bikes, by the way. And I just got on my horse, sat home, and passed out in the saddle because I woke up and she was in her stall. And I'm sitting there on the saddle, and I'm just like, oh, okay. I mean, I missed the door and everything. I don't know, actually, I don't even know how I got into the barn without her knocking me off. So I must have been slouched right over on the saddle. And how I didn't fall off is
The horse is the first designated driver.
she was always the designated driver. Man, I love that horse. Her name was Daisy. She had a brown coat with blonde mane. So yeah, I spent a lot of time with that horse. Me and that horse, we got along really good. I actually didn't start riding bikes until I was like 16 because I had my horse. So that's what's going on in the world with this bullshit between Australia and the American southern border. We are running into a shit show. And now they want to do, what's these passport things? That should be fun. I was actually talking with a buddy who owns a restaurant. I was like, you know what you should do? He's like, what? I said, you should charge the government $1.50 for every passport that every person that you ask for a passport from. I said, technically, I said, you're doing the government's job for them. So I said, charge them. I said, send them a bill, monthly bill. You serviced 150 customers at what, $1.50 each? That's what, two something? I don't know. I suck at math. $225.
$225.
Yeah, that's kind of.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's so $225 a month. It's not somebody's wage. I don't know. I'd probably calculate it backwards. If I've got to hire somebody to stand at the door to check everybody's passports in order to come into my establishment, who's paying that person? I am. But the government is the one that wants me to do this. So why am I paying for something that the government wants me to do, which is actually unlawful and against the Human Charter of Human Rights and against the Canadian Charter of Rights? So it violates two legal documents. And the fun part is that, you know, people are like, oh, this is only a temporary measure. You trust the government that much? Since when has the government done anything temporarily? And on top of that, well, since when has the government ever done anything efficiently? I mean, you got to remember, this is the same group of people that when they legalized marijuana, they operated at a loss for the first 2 years. How do you operate at a loss selling marijuana? I mean, I'm from New Brunswick. Everybody and their dog at one point in their life has probably sold marijuana. And I've only seen idiots manage to not make money selling marijuana. Most people do. And the government operated at a loss for 2 years. It's like, that makes no fucking sense. So, and then they barely made a profit in the third. It's like, it's not that hard. Shit, I know. I think they're overthinking the situation. I mean, most guys that I know in New Brunswick, they put their plants out in the woods. They visit them every couple of days, make sure that they're good. At the end of the season, they pull them up, dry them out, and there's a what we call a clipping party. And that's when everybody shows up to somebody's garage with piles of dry marijuana, and we spend hours and hours trimming marijuana plants and getting really fucking high. Like, I mean, really fucking high. And like to the point to where you just like, I'm not going anywhere. Bring the food to me. And these sessions would, and once you start, here was the thing, marijuana was illegal. So that meant once you started the trimming party, it didn't stop until the last bushel of marijuana was trimmed. And these could be like 10, 12, up to 18 hours doing this, one right after the other, and getting it all done and getting it in a bag and getting it out the door and sold as fast as you can. And these guys, it was practically pure profit. You send a pound out the door for $1,500. What was your investment? Some fuel in your ATV, some plant food. You didn't pay for the seeds. You got the seeds for free. Because people in New Brunswick, they were constantly giving seeds away. Constantly. I still got a bottle around here somewhere that somebody gave me years ago. I have no idea. They just handed them to me, and it's like, you want some seeds? It's, sure. It's a big bottle of seeds. But anyways, government is not efficient at all. So why are we paying attention to these losers? Well, who knows? Mostly out of fear, I think, because after all, they do have the guns. That's the other thing, too. It's like Joe Biden threatened to send government workers to people's houses to inquire about vaccine status. That lasted about 5 minutes in the US. Why? Because they have a Second Amendment. And the people pretty much put these poor government workers on notice by saying, yeah, you come to my door and you're going to meet my little friend. And so, yeah, that got canceled really fast because in the US, if I'm correct, you actually do have the right to shoot somebody if they come on your property uninvited. Is that correct?
I think it can be.
It can be. Depends on which state you're in.
Yeah, I don't know the details, but self-defense is a thing.
Self-defense is a thing. I know. And that was the part that I could never actually understand. Florida actually had to pass a law, and I think Texas did too, a stand your ground law. And I'm thinking to myself, why is that necessary? I guess you got to spell it out for the stupid people nowadays, because it should be rightly assumed that when you live in a state with open carry and somebody is carrying, you probably should be at least civil out in public. I mean, I just, man, you know what I wish? I wish every country had a First Amendment law with certain restrictions on open carry. Because if you're going to carry a weapon around in public, I certainly don't want you carrying around an Uzi. But I think that it is perfectly reasonable to be able to carry a weapon that can hold a limited amount of ammunition and have a limited range on its caliper. So to me, it's like a 9mm with 9 bullets. That is more than efficient for any type of self-defense situation you might find yourself in, if you're halfway competent with the weapon. So to me, it's like, okay, yeah, let's have open carry. Let's limit it to this caliper with this many bullets. And anybody can carry. And I'll tell you, what would happen after that? Yeah, people will start being fucking polite in public again. Because the only reason people...
I forget who said it, but an armed society is a polite society.
Oh, you're damn right it is.
And I forget who said this, but Jeff Cooper. My dad says Jeff Cooper.
Jeff Cooper. I was going to say, it sounds like something that one of those gun manufacturers would say. Which one? Like, anyways, but no, and they're right. An armed society is a polite society. And the thing is that, again, this is an example of government overcomplicating things. Who gives a shit what people have in their house? They could have a whole arsenal in their house. I don't care. It doesn't matter. Because what are you going to do with it? Really, right? You're going to start a war? Probably not. But the second you take it off your property, that's the second you could start losing these weapons. See what I mean? See how you could regulate weapons? It's like, okay, you want a fully automatic Uzi, you want this high caliber, whatever. You want a tank? Sure. But the second it comes off your property, you lose it. So if you want to drive your tank around your own property, have at her, bud. You want to fire rounds off with these high caliber weapons in your backyard, have at her, bud, as long as you're not fucking with your neighbor. Because if one of your stray bullets takes out a neighbor, well, that's manslaughter, no matter how you slice it. You might not have meant to kill them, but you did, so it's manslaughter. So you see, like, there's laws that cover all the stupid shit that people could come up with. But if they keep it on their property and amongst themselves, and the only people that are getting, that might get injured are people that are there of their own free will, so what? I mean, what people do on their private property of their own free will shouldn't be anybody's business unless they are interfering with the free will of another person. Does that make sense? Yeah. So, I mean, again, government overcomplicating society. It's like, why are we overcomplicating these things? Let's keep it simple. And I think that's where Trump was coming from on a lot of this stuff too. It's like, why are we overcomplicating things? Let's keep it simple. Why do we have a complicated tax laws? The only reason we got complicated tax laws is so that big business can cheat because they can hire more accountants who understand that language, can interpret it a certain way so that they can get away with their bullshit. How about we have a simple tax law? It's like you own a company, doesn't matter how big it is. You write down the amount of dollars it takes to run that company. Anything above that is profit. So what's wrong with that?
And you keep up to 20% profit.
Yeah, or
Like
and then
that,
you
or
pay, well, you pay your 10% on your profit,
yeah.
okay, because you're a company. So you pay your 10% on your profit to the tax man, and basically you're minusing all operational costs off the top. So if a company makes $1 million, but it costs, uh, uh, you know, $500,000 to run it, to operate, well, that money can't be taxed. So you're only left with taxing profit. And the only thing that you got to, the tax law can be super simple. You can only write off those expenses which are directly related to your business. You can't get it any more simpler than that. And when and how we got into this bullshit where you can start writing charity off on your taxes, that's bullshit. You shouldn't be, the first time I heard that, there was a voice in my head that was like, that's bullshit. Like immediately, I think I was like maybe 17, 18 years old. I made some money. I gave some of that money to the church at the time, and it was a fair amount of money. And the priest or the pastor was like, let me get you a receipt. You could use it on your taxes. I might have been 18 at the time, maybe 19. And I looked at the pastor and I was like, that's fucked up that I can write that off. And he explained the whole thing to me. And I was like, that's still fucked up. It's like, how is it that my altruism gives me a tax break? It shouldn't. And personal income should not even exist. It's actually theft. Because that's bullshit. It's like, if you could see the amount of money the government takes out of my wages, and I'll tell you, every person will tell you the same thing. It's scandalous. I remember working for a company long time ago, and I had this friend, and she had a kid. And so she, under doing her taxes, she claimed a dependent. Me, being a single guy, my kids living with their mom, I couldn't claim dependents. So I was just down as a single guy, no dependents. The amount that they took out of me was crazy, because she showed me her pay stub once and I showed her mine. And this is why companies tell you not to do this. Oh, you shouldn't talk about your pay with other employees. No, you should, because you'll be shocked at what you'll learn. And what I learned was they were taking 600 out of mine paycheck. They were taking 150 out of hers. I was shocked. I was like, wait a second. It's like, if you're worried that I'm not going to spend that $600, government, don't worry. I'll spend that $600. It will make it back into the system. Trust me. At that point in my life, I have no savings account. What the fuck's that? Savings. Oh, you mean like for a car? Yeah. I got my brother. I'll just go borrow the money from my brother, and then I'll pay him back over the next 5 months. It was actually easier for me to pay my brother than it was to try to save up. He was actually the one that was really good at saving money.
the discussing whatever it is. There were two different things, and I think the one is maybe legitimate, but the other one is they piggybacked off of it or sure did. It says don't discuss money with people who make a lot more or a lot less than you do, and I don't know what your opinion is, but I can understand kind of why maybe that Bill Gates and I might have different things to whine about money or whatever or something like that. But then I don't know at what point the don't discuss salaries thing started being introduced.
Yeah.
But, I think there's two things that are being conflated, that maybe the one's okay and the other is just makes for some awkward moments or something.
The people that engineer our society, they make certain subjects taboo so that we don't talk about them because they are important subjects. I used to wonder, it's like, when did it become taboo not to talk about politics? When did it become taboo not to talk about religion and spiritual things? This is like, I always found this weird. It's like, why are these subjects taboo? And same thing with talking to coworkers about money, how much they make. I mean, it used to be that everybody knew what the other person was making, but at the same time, they also knew how and why that person was making that amount of money that was different from their amount of money, because you just understood, oh, he gets more money than me because he's got these responsibilities. And then that person can look and be like, wow, do I want those responsibilities? Probably not. I'm happy with my pay grade then, because I've got two things that I got to think about and nothing more. There are plenty of people that are happy to do that. Plenty. I mean, I had a cousin that was happy as a pig in shit to just sit on a cash all day. Push a button, cling, 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 cling. She loved the sound of that bell. She was disappointed when it went to the beep, but she was happy as a pig in shit. That was her career. And she understood she would never make anything more than minimum wage. She understood that. But that was her career and she loved it. I mean, she worked all kinds of cashier jobs. And, and the thing that kept her working was her reputation as an honest person. She had a good track record of not stealing from her companies. And so she would get hired.
That helps.
So, yeah. And then there's other people that would look at that and just be like, I could handle that responsibility. Yeah, I could do that. And so they would work. And they would go to that person. It's like, listen, how do I get in your position? What advice would you give me? And they would give them advice. Oh, well, get to know everything about the company. Find out what other divisions are doing. Inquire. Get to know your coworkers, blah, blah, blah. And then if you're really ambitious, those are the things that you would do. But now the reason why they don't want us talking about what other people are getting paid is because people are getting paid more than what they were because of some kind of political influence, family friend influence, that sort of thing. And so they don't want us talking to each other, because maybe Joe Blow that I work beside, maybe he's the nephew of one of the board members of the company that I work for. But I don't know that. And he don't talk to me about his pay, or we don't talk about the company, because I would find out that information. because he's not qualified to be there anyways, but he's there because, well, they had to put him somewhere. And you can't leave a family member unemployed. But if he earned the position, then I would know who he is, how he got there, and why. And then I'd probably respect the guy. But this is the reason why they don't want us talking about this stuff. Is because if you knew how much most government workers make, you would really shit your pants. There's not a single government worker out there that is making less than $80,000 a year. And some of them aren't doing a whole lot to earn it. And I'm not talking about the people that clean the toilets. I'm talking about the people that sit in offices that contribute nothing to anything. And they're making $80,000 a year and they shuffle paper. It's like two monkeys and a chimpanzee could do their job. But
And it's really interesting. I don't know. I don't remember exactly how they, how they got us to find it taboo to talk about the salary, but and politics and spirituality, that's the taboo's been around for a while, but they kind of ramped it up in the last 10 or 20 years, and we all know how they do that. They're just cancel culture, right? You believe different from me, therefore something must be wrong with you, therefore I must attack you, therefore I don't feel comfortable with people like you around. That sort of
I'll tell you exactly how they engineered it.
Okay.
They did it through the public school system. The worst mistake any society can make is having a institutionalized school system at the elementary level. I can agree with an institutionalized education center after the age of 12 or 13, but before that, nope, 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 because these are the informative years of the children. And what do? We put them in an institutionalized education system where they're cookie cuttered and then spit out. Yep. That makes sense, doesn't it? To me, at the elementary level, it should be local schools run by the community and funded by the community. Period. And then that way, the community can take care of, as a community, make sure that the children are getting the influences and the values of the people that live in that community. You see what I mean? And then they're raised with those values with their neighbors. The idea of busing elementary school kids from all over hell's half creation, to me, that's insanity. That's absolute insanity, because these are just little kids. Holy fuck, do you know how many fucking kids start their first day of school absolutely fucking traumatized, terrified to get on the big yellow bus? And then the parents trusting that that driver is not half in the bag. Oh my God. This is how we fucked ourselves. I mean, how did we get here is a good question. I mean, I could put my 13-year-old on a school bus to go to a school that has a more institutionalized learning, because they would be at that point in their life where they've got all the foundation that they need, and now all we're doing is building on top of that foundation. So now we want to put a foundation. So on this, we got a foundation of math, but now we're going to put calculus on top of it. And the only reason they can do calculus is because they learned math in elementary, but they learned it in such a way that it wasn't memorization, it was actual learning and thinking. I mean, there's a way I try to teach myself, but it I wasn't very successful at it. But there was a way that the Egyptians did multiplication, and they did it all on their fingers. And what they did is they broke the equation down, and there was like 3 or 4 rules, and I don't even know. Well, I mean, I did have it, but I haven't done it in so long that I've lost it. But it was a neat way to do multiplying, and it was recognizing like certain numbers, and you pair those numbers together, and when you paired those numbers together and calculated them this way, then you put the answer down here, you calculate another way, and then, or wherever direction those numbers were going, that is where you put the number underneath, and it was the right answer every time. And you did it all on your fingers, and a little bit of just knowing that this was the direction, which direction you were going. And yeah, it worked every time. So I thought that was a cool way. So I mean, stuff like that we could teach kids. Instead of getting kids to memorize words, you teach them the structure of words. I was involved with, like, my spelling is like really bad. Like, it's really bad. Somebody must have noticed in middle school, because I got pulled out of regular class and got put into an experimental spelling class with about half a dozen or so other kids. And we were all from different grades and different classes. And we and they taught us to spell in a different way, which was really cool, because we weren't memorizing the words, we were learning the structure of the words. And I still use the technique that I learned in that like 3 or 4 month period that we did the course. I still use that system today to learn how to spell complicated words, because what the course did, and whoever did this course, they're fucking brilliant, is what they were. So you would take a word like construction, okay? So you break the word down to construct and shine, or yeah, shine. And you learned what the purpose of this word was, like what the purpose of con was, what the purpose of struct was, and then your, and then shan. And then these were the bases that you learned things, and then you put the words together from their very root and primitive form. It was pretty much the same technique that I learned when I was learning programming languages. It was almost the same idea of just like breaking things down to like its base principles and form, and then building it back up into something that is an actual structure, like a word. So that's how I learned to spell. I don't spell like it. I don't memorize. I don't memorize well, actually. I can't. I remember, but I don't memorize. There's a difference. One involves understanding. You know what? We should move to some Urantia stuff.
Okay.
I think we've petered out that political stuff. I think that if we go on too much more, we might end up crossing a YouTube line or a Facebook line, which is disgusting. Because the thing is that the people that watch this are watching it because they want to. So we should be able to say what we want to. And if people don't like it, then they don't have to watch it.
Exactly.
So it's like, I don't understand this babysitting society. It's like, you can change the channel. And I used to even think this back in the 80s and 90s when all we had was television. I'd be like, just change the fucking channel. It's like, why are you getting mad at what the person is saying? Just change the fucking channel. If you don't put eyeballs on that person, then they no longer have an audience and they're just in an echo chamber, and let them sit there. Actually, that's kind of how we ended up getting to this part in our society, is because of echo chambers. But it's necessary. It's necessary. I had a vision a couple of days ago, and it was messed up. And I think I know why Michael is doing this. And it blows my fucking mind. Like, it really blows my fucking mind. And it's actually brilliant in a way, because it's like, how the fuck is he pulling this off? Okay. Understand that the vaccines are designed to kill God within you. Plain and simple, straightforward. There are videos on the internet of Bill Gates actually explaining this to the CIA. They call it the fun vax. So the way that it's talked about is, well, this is how we can change these religious fundamentalists, these religionists, so that they don't believe in anything anymore. That really happened back in 2004. So, and I got thinking, it's like, oh my God, these poor people. It's like it's cutting them off from their thought adjuster. But then I realized, it was like, whoa, wait a second. Wait a second. If they're cut off from their thought adjuster and they can no longer fuse with their thought adjuster because of what the vaccine did to them, then that only leaves spiritual fusion. Spiritual fusion is for Michael. And I was like, oh my fuck, buddy, holy shit. When you ask Father for like us, it's like, you're getting us. It's like, holy shit. Because if you can't, spiritual fusion is the only thing left on the table. That means that you stay within the Nebedia universe. Okay. And you go through, so you become a Nebedian finillator when you're spirit fused. And the process is very similar to what the process that the finilators go through on Paradise, except the spirit fused, their material that they gathered through time and space and in their journey to complete spiritual fusion, that gets completely stripped off of you, and that is food for Nebedia to keep building her universe. I've always wondered where the material comes from to build for the building blocks of the universe. Where does that material come from? Well, they say the whole universe started from this little grain of nothing. It's like, okay, okay. Where did the rest of it come from? Oh, no, no, no. It all came from that. Oh, but it's only like 1% of the universe. The rest is empty space. Oh, oh, okay. So he said, yeah, you can like crunch all that down, all the matter of the universe. All right. And then we find out that, wait a second, what we see, what we see in our spectrum is really only 1% of what the universe actually is. We have what we call this dark matter. And you're like, well, dark matter's nothing. Matter is in the name. So that means that it's something. It's like, so that's the universe we live in. So where the fuck did all that come from? It's like, oh my God. Yeah, Nebedia needs food to grow. And the whole process was shown to me. Now, here's the thing. Okay. This is why the process is what it is. People are going to think I'm out of my fucking tree. Okay. To be spirit fused means that a fragment of Michael will reside inside of you. Okay. So it's the same as the thought adjusters, fragment of God, the Father, except it's God, our creator Father. and and so that is Michael that resides in each in the spirit fused. Now, Nebedia loves Michael, and Michael loves Nebedia. They were both born on paradise. Nebedia from the eternal mother, and a union between the eternal mother and the eternal daughter. So Nebedia is born. She is spirit. And Michael is born from the union between the eternal father and the eternal mother. Okay, sorry. Let's back up. Okay. The union between the eternal son and the eternal daughter creates Nebedia, which is spirit. Then the union between the eternal father and the eternal mother creates Michael, which is the creator son. And together, Michael and Nebedia are together in marriage as one for all eternity. And so when Michael comes to Nebedia, Nebedia recognizes Michael as being part of herself and loves Michael and will not devour Michael. Okay? Now, when the spirit fuse show up at the temple of Nebedia, they have this matter of time and space about them, which is essentially baggage. But all of the best parts of you have already been integrated into that fragment of Michael. So you're Michael. So you are now Michael with all the understanding that Michael has, but you're also you because you remember that you are you. So it's almost like transferring all the data, all the good uncorrupted data from one computer over to this supercomputer, and then go through Nebedia, who then takes all that data from time and space and digests it and changes it and transforms it into matter to grow the universe. But you survived the process because you fused with a fragment of Michael. And there's the kick in the nuts too. You have, again, you have all the memories and experiences of Michael, but but they are also your experiences too. And all the understanding. Well, maybe not all the memories of Michael, but all the understanding that Michael has of the universe, how it works, and what his ultimate plan is. Because you can't fuse with Michael unless you are one with his plan for the universe. Which got me thinking, how did Lucifer not know this? That blows my mind. That Lucifer could not understand this part of how the universe works. He must have seen it. He must have seen it a different way than what I do. Because I see it as an absolutely beautiful thing. I understand right down to some of the finer details how it works. But to try to explain those finer details, well, you kind of got to know a little bit about psychology too, and about how to transfer data onto another medium. And it's just like, wow. And then you also ask yourself too, it's like, well, then it's almost like it's a copy of you superimposed over Michael. So how do you know it's you and not just a memory of you? How many science fiction movies have you watched?
Lots and lots.
It,
Tons.
it's the same struggle.
Everything from the Matrix to Star Trek. You know, the thing with Spock and his Katra, and he put it in McCoy, and then they restored it to him from McCoy after his body was resurrected on the Genesis planet and stuff.
So yeah, and when you really come down and think about it, we are just memories, and and all of our emotions are part of that memory blocks. Like I like the character Data, and I like that how the character evolved. And as I watched The Next Generation, I I thought to myself, that could be how the creator evolved. The creator starts out with awareness of self, and then over time of having perfect memory and perfect recall, just like Data has, over time you would end up developing a personality and a character, and then eventually a creator would be born out of that. Because in the end, Data's character was driven to want to create an offspring in his daughter. So, and I liked how they put the script together that explained how Data came to this. And the reason why he came to it were actually some very good, solid, logical reasons why it would be wise for him to procreate and to pass on part of his neural net onto his daughter, so that humanity could benefit from more androids like him who have an appreciation for mankind. Because the Star Trek series explored the possibility of an android that didn't have an appreciation for human life. And so, what's that?
Data's twin brother,
Lore, that's it.
Right.
And so Data, by creating his own offspring, was assuring that his offspring would share the same characteristics as he does. And I thought to myself, that is very interesting. I was like, wow. I was like, that has got some huge philosophical impact right there. I mean, a lot of the Star Trek stories do, but that was one that I just like, I mean, I could just see like the creator evolving through a similar process of just experience.
And speaking of the evolution of data, let me just quickly run something past you, that this idea that I had. I don't know if you've seen episodes of the new series Picard or
Yeah,
not.
I think up to episode 8 or 9, maybe.
Okay. Um, let's see. So I'm going to explain this
Or maybe I've seen 2 seasons
with
of
the
it.
fewest. Yeah, yeah. Picard has one. I don't know. I think the second season has started. There was 10 episodes of the first
Okay, then I
season.
watched the first
But
season.
the point I'm trying to make, I guess, is in the near the end of the first season,
Mm-hmm.
um, Data's memory is being preserved in some kind of a machine, and Picard goes in there and talks to Data, and then they shut down the machine, and Data experiences death. And then there's some speculation as to whether Dr. Soong's son is actually Lore or something. But the dichotomy between Data and Lore, and the possibility of Data being able to exist in the afterlife, because quantum physics, like everything, he was. I don't think his consciousness could be lost to the universe, or maybe it could, but the way I'm thinking of, somehow it couldn't. If Picard somehow goes into the afterlife at some point after both Data and Lore have died in the material world, they would be integrated into one being called Wisdom,
Uh,
and Data would have a fuller understanding of life, and Lore would be a little more what's the word?
Appreciative.
Conscientious, appreciative, yeah, compassionate, and it would be one entity. Where before they were two, they were opposite sides.
Mm.
They were split apart while they were in the material world. And if you were able to combine them, it would be one entity that was complete.
And that actually brings back around to why God would split himself in the beginning. So it would be Father and then Eternal Son. Actually, in my visions, the reason why God split himself was because he was hungry, and he basically devoured the Eternal Son over and over and over again for like 1 billion years, until finally that became that the Eternal Son finally became they came to an understanding and a partnership to want to work together to stop this cycle. They were both tired of this cycle after 1 billion years. And actually, I think there's a Twilight Zone episode that where two uh, nemesis, two rivals were locked for like eternity in this one small space, and it would be like they would kill each other, and then all of a sudden they would reappear through a teleportation beam, and then it would just start all over again, and it would just start out the same way, one over in this corner, the other one over in this corner. They're like trying to like, they're just hating on each other, like making weapons to kill the other one, and then till finally the whole thing comes into the center, and they and then they fight, but there's dialogue between them in between time, okay, talking to each other, but they don't trust each other because, well, one is like talking about, I'm not going to kill you, but meanwhile he's making a knife, okay, because there's tools and stuff for them to craft weapons. There's no weapons, but the ability to craft weapons is in this room with them. It's almost like a saw setup. And but so they're communicating, but at the same time they're both making weapons, and they're like getting like clever about their weapons. And then it's like at some point they end up meeting each other in the center, and it ends the same way every time. They kill each other every time. And then, like, after they kill each other, all the bodies, like a beam comes down and the bodies disappear into the floor. And then from the ceiling down comes these other beams, and they show up in the opposite corners. And this goes on and on and on. A similar situation with God and the eternal Son. But there was dialogue between them. They had to, like, basically, the dialogue grew between them because they didn't. And once the dialogue grew and became more complicated, then they came to understand each other and then want to work with each other and then really love each other. And once they got to that point, that is when creation, this is when Havana was, this is first paradise grew out. And then once paradise grew out to a certain point, in an instant, Havana appeared with all of its billions of perfect planets. A billion planets. Why a billion planets? One planet for every year that they consumed each other. And each one of those planets contain the original blueprint for intelligent life. And so there's a blueprint of human beings on a planet in all its varieties and colors. There's a planet with dinosaurs in all its varieties and colors. And so, yeah, billions of creatures. And then those creatures willingly give up their essence for creation. So these creatures in Havana will willingly surrender everything that they are, all their experience, to the Father. And the Father takes their essence and it gets compacted into these little square boxes that glow, and they've got like certain symbols on them. Those boxes are used by the creator sons to create galaxies with life in them. And so this is why, like, to the creator sons, creation is so sacred to them, because they understand the sacrifice that these Havana creatures made so that they could create a galaxy in a universe of their making. So you see the sacredness and how much love there is all the way up the chain of creation. It's like they are holding a trust, and they know it. You see, God trusts that the eternal Son will not devour him. And the eternal Son trusts that God will not devour him, because they can. Okay? They did it for 1 billion years. So now they trust that they're not going to devour each other. And also the eternal Son knows how to satiate the Father's hunger, primal hunger. so that the Father does not fall into the primal hunger, which hasn't existed in billions of years already. And how that is done is through the phenylators. The phenylators feed God matter from time and space, from all of his universes, because the phenylators travel through all the universes of creation on in through Havana and to paradise. And while they are doing that, they're constantly picking up more, more, more matter, more energy. Thought is energy, energy is matter. So the more experience a phenylator has, the more he has to offer the creator in the way of energy, memories. And the more pure those memories are, the more it is for the Father. So so when the phenylator goes through the Father, it's the same process. All of time and space is stripped away so that all that's left is the fragment of God, because God does not consume himself. And this fragment is left with the imprint of you or me. All of our memories, all of our experiences is now on this fragment forever and eternity. And then we go and all we do is add to it. And we keep adding to the creator's experience. And you just go back out into the universe and do shit. I'm not sure if you do whatever the fuck you want. I'm sure maybe there's missions. Who knows? I mean, I could live with the idea of just doing whatever the fuck I want, because yeah, you wouldn't have to worry about doing the wrong thing, because by that time you're basically one with everything that the Father wants to do. You're one with his plan. It's like there's nothing there that would say that you would change that plan. It's like, nope, wouldn't change a fucking thing. Let's keep her rolling. Nope. Yeah, it looks like shit right now, but I see the long picture. It's like right now, this planet looks like shit, but if we get through this, it'll be fucking amazing. I mean, it will be nuts, because, and this is what Michael is doing. Everything has to collapse in at once. It's all going to come to a head. And it's going to keep going this way until everybody has chosen their side. I remember last year, I was always thinking that shit, Michael might have to get rid of like over half the people on this planet in order to get his 99%. Yeah, that's part of it, but it's not the whole thing. Because what I'm seeing now going on with around the world, Michael is going to keep going on this path until everybody makes a decision. And he's going to get his 99%. And the people that are still on the fence, they need to get off the fence. And you got to choose a side. It's going to come down to it. It's either going to be, tyranny or freedom. Tyranny leads us into the path of death and destruction, death and darkness. Freedom leads us to the path of light and life, the golden path. And you got to decide which one you want. And whatever people decide, that is pretty much what we're going to get. These elites are not going to make this decision for us, even though they are trying by forcing a mandate that is against Charter of Rights and against the Charter of Human Rights. So it's not going to work. Michael isn't going to let it work. And when things start falling apart, these fence sitters in the end are, well, you're going to have to make a decision no matter what. And those that have chosen the dark side will be swept away immediately. And we are going to watch them be swept away in real time. That's going to be the most fucked up part. I'm actually curious to see what's going to happen next week with Milley. Or maybe you don't know this one. Do you know this one, General Milley?
Nope.
Oh my goodness. At first, I was like, okay, maybe the guy's just doing, he's, I basically, I just chalked it up to like, well, this guy really didn't step over the line. But now we're starting to figure out that maybe he probably did. So General Milley was the national security advisor to President Trump. Now, in his capacity as advisor to the president, he had to basically relinquish all his military authority. He has none. He keeps his rank. He does not lose his rank, and he keeps his military status. But he has no authority to give anybody any orders. His only job is to advise the president. That's his only function. And to keep the lines of communication open with allies and, surprisingly enough, enemies. Okay? So that's his job. Well, at some point, he made a phone call and he told his Chinese counterpart that don't worry about it. I'll let you know if Trump orders a strike against China. Okay. That in itself is probably treasonous, but that statement has not been substantiated. So whether it's true or not, who knows? If it is true, it's probably treason. But what can be substantiated is that the stuff where he might have overstepped his authority. He walked into a room of generals, the Joint Chiefs, and he basically ordered them to keep him in the loop. That if the president was thinking about launching a strike against anybody, that they would have to let him know. Kind of a strange order to give. That on its face was strange. It's like, but they were quickly, General Milley quickly defended his actions by calling it a operational review. And I'm like, okay. It could be an operational review. Yeah, I can give him that. It's strange, but it's well within his purview of responsibility to do that. So I'm thinking to myself, okay. But it turns out that there was no operational review, and that order came from a clear blue sky and left all the generals of the Joint Chiefs a little bit confused. Because in the manual, it doesn't say anything about their obligation to letting the military advisor to the president know anything. It's not in the manual. It's not in the rules. And the Army's all about their rules. It's like, if you love rules, Army's for you. They got all kinds of them. Everything is covered. There's no question mark in the Army. It's like they've got a little rule book for everything. I shit you not. And hell, they even got a rule book for how you fucking sit down and take a shit on a submarine. So they got rules for everything. And so it's not in the rule book. And that's all the generals care about. It's not in the rule book, buddy. So now that becomes a question mark. It's like, okay, if it's not in the rule book, why did you do it? It's like, he's a general too. He should know this shit, right? I mean, he didn't get to